Welcome, friends, to Reality Test. What is reality testing, you may ask? Well, it's something we all do every day, maybe with our loved ones over dinner, with coworkers at the water cooler, etc., when we check our subjective or personal emotions, thoughts, and so forth against objective or sort of more agreed upon fact-based reality. Although, because Dr. Ray and I, Dr. Kay, are social constructionists, we don't actually believe there's one true objective reality, but rather our own personal versions of it constructed in the context of relationships. But you get the idea. So here in Reality Test, we're going to be testing the castmate realities and the producer antics of our favorite reality TV shows against what we know as licensed psychologists about the reality out here, off of our TVs. We hope you'll join us as we attempt to reality test. Listen, y'all, we have a lengthy version of our disclaimer in the show description text, also in our old episodes, but we do ethically need to at least include part of it at the start of each episode. So here's our briefest version of the disclaimer. If you've heard it before, you can skip ahead 30 seconds, or for the old episodes, 2 minutes. So although we're licensed psychologists, psychotherapists, supervisors in the context of our professional roles, we are not acting as therapists in the context of this pod, neither for you nor for the reality castmates we discuss. We will give our opinions as our whole human selves, albeit supported by our psychological knowledge, and we will talk about diagnoses rather than assigning them, as we cannot ethically assign diagnoses without formal psych assessment. But both the opinions and diagnoses we discuss might easily be erroneous, as we don't personally know the folks in reality TV shows. That's it. Thanks, y'all. Now check out our campy theme song.
Are you feeling stressed? Your head's all messed? Well, let's forget all the rest. Fuck it, we're blessed. Cause it's time to talk reality test. Come with us. Let's reality test. Welcome to Reality Test. I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Dr. Kay. Feel free to check in and take a seat wherever you like. We're going back to Beverly Hills, to the bouge.
Woo!
I almost just called it the bouge, but that would sound sort of weird.
Bouge.
We're going back to the bouge.
It is the bouge, though.
Yeah.
It's very bougie. It's an accurate title.
Mm-hmm. It truly is. Just the bougiest. But prior to going back to the bougiest, which, by the way, we're going to do episodes 2 through 4, recap, we're going to first do our little check-in. So tell me what's on your heart and mind today, dear Dr. Ray.
What is on my heart and mind this week? Let's see. I am having a bridal shower next week, which is wild and very heteronormative. And I keep telling people, and it's awkward because I realize I didn't tell them I was engaged. Like, students are asking me what I'm doing over break. And I'm like, oh, I have a bridal shower. And they're like, for who? And I'm like, oh, me. And they're like, oh my God. Yeah, the whole thing. And I realize that I'm like so awkward in those situations because it's not that I'm not girly and not that there's anything wrong with being girly. I think being girly is awesome. But I realize that there's like a code of what people are supposed to say to each other that I don't quite say or know how to talk about. And it cracks me up. And someone was like, oh, are you a short dress girly, a long dress girly? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what kind of girly I am, but I am wearing a long dress to my wedding. But it's just kind of cracking me up. And I've actually find it like sociologically interesting. Like it seems like a really lovely way that women bond because every time I've disclosed this, it's like to people that I'm not as close with who, you know, it's like a shared language, I think, that then they're like, oh my God, this. And it's kind of cute and sweet. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. So sociologically, it's interesting, even though I'm awkward in disclosing these things, but should be fun.
I love it. Yeah, I had a hard time disclosing back when the first time I was engaged too. Like it feels awkward and weird because you're kind of breaking the boundary with students a little bit. Like it's not as professional to break into that because it is so bonding. So I totally get that. It's sort of like you're sort of like fumbling a little bit and telling people, but that's so sweet. I'm so glad that you're feeling it's a good bonding experience. And by the way, I had no idea. I also was not asked, are you a long dress or a short dress girly? So that is new. That is, at least, I don't know. Maybe it's not, but I was not asked that. So there definitely might be a code. And also it might be unique to who you're talking to.
this is true, or this generation, but it does seem like certain type of women have thought about these things a lot, which I think is cool. Like,
Yeah.
I think I used to, from like a feminist perspective, judge that, but I actually think it's cute. Like, it's really cool. I almost said cute, which sounds like patronizing, to have like these shared experiences and like things to kind of bond over. Like, it's kind of sweet. And I can see why people gravitate towards it.
Totally, totally. And I think that is what you just said is the sort of like where it gets a little mushy in terms of feminism is like when it is sort of infantilized, like it's cutesy or it's like thinking about the like wedding book you've had since you were a little girl or whatever. Like I also didn't have that. I had no expectations about my wedding growing up. I had no interest in thinking about it. I didn't care. I found that my first wedding was all about making other people happy. Like it really didn't even, I was like, I had no stake in it. You know, like literally on the wedding day, I was called I was called Bride Chilla. Instead of Bridezilla, I was Bride Chilla because I was just chilling. I did not give a fuck. I was like, you guys can do whatever you want to do. I'm just going to hang out. Like, didn't have any expectations.
That is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes for honestly a better day, to be fair. But I think in the same way, yeah, like I didn't have a lot of expectations for it, but I still loved everything I got out of it. Like all those moments of bonding are so cool. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be a beautiful day and I can't wait to be there. Yay.
It's going to be so fun. So fun.
It is.
I dropped my ear pod, so I'm going to get it.
I also just dropped mine and was under the desk there. So it's kind of fun. We had like a shared moment, another shared moment of bonding. How about that?
I love it. And this is a moment of bonding that I feel much more comfortable talking about because right? Ear pod sizes are very complicated and it's hard to get it right. Too big, too small, too much, not enough. Very complicated stuff.
And people's ears are different. People have different ears that work or don't work with AirPods. And mine, I am constantly pushing them back into my head. And I thought that it was because that like I had like ear sweat or something. But I think it actually is when my ears are cleaner, it's harder. You know what I mean? I think that's actually the problem. When I have showered, they slip right back out. So
the wax is like
the wax is helping it if it's there. Obviously not today either, though. They're slipping out still.
Are you a big ear girly or a small ear girly?
How big are your ear holes?
These are the things to bond over. I have very small ears, like kind of shockingly so. They're very baby. Aww. But
I have really small hands.
Oh, I have really large hands. Look at us.
I love it.
Yes. But what is on your heart and mind this week, dear Dr. K?
I'm going to dedicate my check-in to some updates about the podcast because that's where my heart and mind has been anyway, which is very cool. It's been very inundated and heavy. So some information is the next 2 weeks we are taking off because that's Christmas and New Year's, because next week we would have been recording the one for the week of Christmas. So y'all are listening to this on the week of the 16th. Therefore, next week is Christmas week. We will not be having a podcast that week or the week after for New Year's. That's both for our sake to enjoy some holiday business, but then also for y'all's sake, for you to enjoy some holiday business and not be listening to podcasts like most people do not on those weeks. And then also we're going to be working hard on this thing we're working hard on still. So we'll have some news about that when we come back from our break. And soon after that, it will be dropped, if you will. The thing we'll be sharing news about will be dropped soon after we tell you what it is. But we're working our little tail feathers off on it. So we hope you all will enjoy it. And we are enjoying it. So even if that's all we get out of it, I'm happy.
It is a ball and a half. And Dr. K has done a ton of work. And I am very impressed and think she has some other skills besides being a podcaster and psychologist extraordinaire. But I won't spoil what they are just yet.
You just don't know. I was going to say, please also say psychologist. Podcasting is also not my skill.
Her primary training, education, podcaster.
Right? You're like, she's also a good podcaster. I was like, no. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for adding psychologist. Excellent. Perfect. You're a doll. No, it's been a joy trying to like figure out our podcasting roles too. It really has been because it's like a whole other set of skills. It certainly is. We've been sort of like figuring it out as we go. And to anyone who's been listening since the beginning or has heard earlier episodes, you probably have a sense of where we started, but we have been getting better and we're going to keep learning. And that's the joy of life. We'll never stop learning. What a gift.
AFOG, another fucking opportunity for growth.
Shut up. I'm obsessed with that. That's amazing. AFOG. Where is that from and can I steal it? I'm obsessed.
I have heard other people say another fucking opportunity for growth, and I think it's hilarious every time I've heard it. And then I'm not sure if I created it. I heard someone, I may have just, I can't tell if I created or co-opted it, but I do very much like acronyms. So I was like, oh, AFOG, that works very well for me.
Wait, what was yours then? I like the fucking, now the fucking one is stuck in my head. What was yours that you created? Another what?
Another fucking opportunity for growth. I think I once heard someone else say AFGO, like another fucking growth opportunity, but that doesn't work as an acronym. But AFOG
does. is the move. Okay, so you always said another fucking opportunity for growth. Okay, good. I thought you had a different use for F at first, but no, good. I love it. Nope. Another fucking opportunity for growth, obsessed, is happening. We're going to make this a thing. This is now going to be a podcast thing. We're going to say AFOG. Yay! It's going to be the thing. We're going to use it. We could have an AFOG corner. We could have an area of the podcast that's about AFOG because we talk about growth all the time.
I love it.
Our test results award is actually AFOG.
Ooh, yes. It's multiple things. It's testing results and it's an AFOG.
It's an AFOG.
I like it.
An AFOG. Oh, obsessed. That's so much fun. Yay. Acronyms.
Love it.
What a delight. Well,
oh my God.
Yeah.
I actually have tea. I have reality.
Share some
have
reality.
You seen this? Unsurprising. And honestly, I feel like this person's kind of growth journey on Vanderpump Rules was kind of bullshit. Mm-hmm. James Kennedy arrested for domestic violence. Yeah.
What? With our girl? Yeah. Wait, with Allie? Our girl? Well, it wouldn't matter with him anyway, by the way. But so with Allie, wow.
It's been all over Instagram, and it's like, I always felt like his like growth opportunity was a little like short-sighted because the way he treats people when he gets dysregulated is really concerning. The way he treated Raquel was really concerning.
Oh, big time.
The way he talked to Allie, it seems like she had a good handle on it, but I kind of wonder if now that he's no longer going to be on this show where his narrative is this growth opportunity, like it always felt kind of narcissistic to me, or like see, look how much better I'm doing now, Tom Sandoval.
Yeah.
So I hope Allie leaves him. She's way too good for him in pretty much every way. Yeah. I think she's okay. I guess she's been seen since. And I mean, I don't know how she is psychologically. Oh my God, I think it seems like it happened at a party and someone else called it in. So I don't really know what the details are.
Too. Wow.
I know. But I hope that Allie gets the fuck out of there because she's amazing and deserves way better than James fucking Kennedy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sad about the party thing. Because part of what I was like a little bit, I'm a little bit like validated in the same way you are about like, we were totally talking about how we didn't believe it. We were like, this man is not any of the things he's saying. We've been saying that since Get. So like that is a little bit validating about it. But also I was kind of hoping that meant like her empowerment. Then this is like no judgment at all that she wasn't the one that called it in. But for someone else to do it, that does sort of like take away your voice and your power as the partner. And so like for that reason, I feel like that kind of changes what it might be like for her, and I feel sad for her. I would anyway, but also an additional way there. Wow. And then James gets to just blame this person for calling it in and not have any reason for growth from it. Like versus Allie calling it in and him having to look at it in order to stay with her, you know.
And be like, it's not what she thought it was. She misread the situation.
Right.
But like, no, the way he gets when he is dysregulated is scary. It always has been.
Problematic, deeply fucked up. Yeah. Yeah. Really scary. Scary. Like, and then always like, even when he apologizes, it feels very much like this is what I have to do right now in the moment to get to the next conversation. Or to like,
you're my angel, you're my sweetheart, you're my blah, blah, blah.
It's just that once. It was just, I was really drunk.
Yeah. It's always bullshit. But I just hope Allie's okay. Whatever she decides to do next, I hope she's doing all right. Yeah. She deserves good things.
For real, yeah. And all people do, frankly. And I really hope the best for him, too. I hope he gets the help that he needs in a real serious way. I think if it is sort of like the more pathological narcissism, then it's unlikely that he will. But that's possibly not the case. So either way, I hope he gets some sort of support in not doing that. No violence
anymore. Yes, against women, against anyone. Like, just stop.
Yep,
Just fucking stop.
Yeah. I think the drinking thing, right? Like when he has been sober, I think but like it doesn't tend to last long, I think. So that's tough. So maybe it's more about substance help, but might be helpful. But, like you said, it's when he gets dysregulated, which frankly, I'm sure it could happen when he's sober too. And we just haven't seen that on the show.
Yeah. And it's 10 times, any like dysregulation issues are 10 times worse. And he probably is drinking again because he doesn't have the camera to tell he's sober.
Well, he started on camera, remember? He started in the last season. Yeah. He's only drinking sometimes or whatever. He was drinking. Yeah. So he definitely had fallen off the wagon before the last season was even really started, I think, actually. I think it started at the end of the season before, maybe, or whatever, early on in the season at the very least. So he definitely was drinking again, but trying to regulate it. And then still didn't. He still had a fight at the beach or something. That was after he had fallen back off the wagon with Schwartz on the beach. So, yeah, no, I definitely think that alcohol was likely involved. It sounds like they were at a party or something, too. So, Oogly. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really sad. And also, I'm sure triggering for many people. So hopeful that everybody gets the support they need in response.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh.
So, total pivot because we're about to go to some bougie, rather shallow in some of the moments, pieces of information related to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, episode 2 to 4. And there are some really deep conversations that happen, but there's also a lot of fluff in the midst of it, which maybe is something we like to have right now. A little bit of fluff.
Yes.
So
too many problematic men in the world. And there's problematic men on this show. And I think we see a lot of that.
That is a much better segue. There is actually, it's a very good point. There is definitely also some problematic male behavior in this show. But that's where we're going to go. Other problematic men. But we're going to start out with some women here first, because first we have the end of the fight between Kyle and Dorit. We ended the previous episode 1, with the beginning of their fight at the Surrealism Ball. So at this point in the conversation at the beginning of episode 2, Kyle is saying, we both have our side, we're both hurt. Dorit starts out by sort of like smiling and nodding, but then she sort of at some point stops and is pretty frustrated with Kyle. And she says, well, when you publicly said we're not friends, Kyle talks about the issues she had with Dorit, but really soon into Kyle talking, Dorit interrupts her and says, this is exactly what I expected. You think I'm some fucking idiot. That's not why you went on Amazon Live and said that. You're mad because something I said on Watch What Happens Live. And just right here, you can hear where like she's putting words in Kyle's mouth. And I think it happens in both directions, but certainly here she's like, that's not what you were mad about. You're mad about this. So the comment from Watch What Happens Live was that apparently Kyle said Dorit said, and the thing that Kyle's upset with Dorit for saying is, the closer that Kyle got with Morgan, the further it felt like she was getting away from me. So like replacing her with Morgan. And so then that's why Kyle may have said, we were never really friends to begin with, kind of thing. So Dorit says, if Kyle can tell me the truth, we can have an honest conversation and move on. I mean, I think that's like subjective, what the truth is in this case. Like everybody has their feelings. It might really feel to Kyle like what she's telling Dorit is the truth about what wasn't going well for her, what she didn't like about the parts of their friendship. So don't know about that. Kyle says, I've been a good friend. Dorit says, not lately. Kyle says, yeah, but I've been struggling, Dorit. So at the end of the day, Dorit says, I don't give a fuck. And then and also was saying like, she's been a bad friend and cold and distant. So it ends with Dorit saying, grace time is over. Grace time is over. Meaning she gave Kyle grace at the beginning of struggling when her friend died and then her husband separated from her. So now grace time is over. Apparently.
LOL. Yeah, it was not the best conversation. I found Dorit to be very dysregulated. Not that Kyle's perfect or anyone's good or bad, but it did seem like Dorit was not really willing to listen.
No, she really wanted to be heard first still, I think. But yeah. So she was very vocal and not really open to hearing Kyle's comment.
No, indeed. But then we pivot to Dorit talking to Erika and Bose. So Dorit and Erika go over to Bose's place. And Bose was talking about Kyle with Dorit, like trying to figure out what she's mad at you for. And Dorit just shrugs as if there's like nothing, which is unfair because she knows there are things. Yeah. Like to make it out like she's like this innocent bystander. Yes. Yeah. Which is not true. And I think Bose sees that. I think Bose sees that there's a lot of layers to what's happening. She even says that later on in a confessional. Yeah. Dorit thinks that Kyle's strategy is make her feel bad for me and then she'll get over it. Which I don't know, maybe. And then we learned that PK would leave for weeks at a time when he was upset, which was really surprising. I put this as a Dorit needs some therapy. This is then talked about in later episodes, but I really think she needs to kind of process her relationship with PK. It's not even, I don't even have a deep psychological underpinning here. It's just like, it's so clearly unprocessed and she's in denial about what's happening and what has been happening in their relationship. And it's coming out in other ways. There's a lot of displacement, I think, onto Kyle, and Kyle some displacement onto Dorit. So it's
100%.
just, a bummer.
It is, especially when they would be helpful for each other to be healing together, as they say eventually.
And then Dorit thinks that there's a possibility that they're going to get back together. She's still holding on to hope, which is kind of heartbreaking because I don't think PK is there anymore.
No, ma'am. Yeah, that's definitely a hard part of it. And meanwhile, we then cut to Kathy, Erika, and Sutton doing a surprise visit for Kyle to cheer her up. And that's the same dynamic. We're now seeing Kyle do similarly to Dorit, where she talks about feeling like maybe it's different for her. She basically says, Sutton tells us about Kyle that she seems hurt and hopeful. And I think that was like a really well put kind of like pairing of words that fits for both Dorit and Kyle, because this is also something that I wanted to give my segment for about something we've mentioned previously, just because we talked about it last time we did a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills recap, where we were talking about how they're both in denial. And like you just brought this up too. So it's several ways we've talked about it before, that they're both in denial about their divorces. And so they're in the denial phase of the grief associated with divorce, where Kyle is still a little bit hopeful that it's different. She talked about how Mauricio brought flowers for Mother's Day. She felt like he was really respectful. And then meanwhile, Dorit saying if we got back together, she would be open to that or whatever. I do, by the way, I was just thinking as we were talking about that I do remember that when she was really, really hurting with the PTSD, PK was gone. And that also PK was gone when they got robbed. And I remember her telling us that and was sort of like, he disappears when I need him. So I do remember that, but it was surprising to hear it's like weeks, multiple weeks at a time. And I think it was surprising to her friends. So I guess they didn't really clock what she was saying about during the robbery. But yeah, she didn't say how long it had been, I suppose. That's the other thing that's upsetting. But yeah, so the piece about the denial phase of grief is that soon after, and I think we start to see them move through the phases a little bit, but they seem like kind of even through episode 4, pretty much still in the denial phase of the divorce there.
Yeah. So Sutton, I think, is reading both Dorit and Kyle's situation and is concerned about them. And I think there's a little bit of projection from her own divorce, certainly. We're talking a lot about psychodynamic defenses today. Maybe we'll do a mental health checkup on that later. But yeah, they're fun. Well, not fun sometimes.
Well, they are, though.
They're very interesting.
They're self-protective. It's when they like take over in a self-harming way that we want to like work on them. But it's not like we want to get rid of our defenses. They're there for a reason.
Yeah. No. We have them for a reason. But I think Sutton is coming from a place of like real concern, having gone through a divorce. And I think she is seeing the situation clearly and projecting a little bit. Like Kyle does seem a little ignorant about the finances. She's alluded to that in past seasons, that she doesn't really know what happens with the money. I may have talked about this last episode.
Or like a number of things.
Yeah, she doesn't really know how to do very much. And so Mauricio could easily take advantage of that, even if they have a good relationship. I mean, observing, maybe he gets anxious on TV, but all he really does is laugh. So
he's a little dismissive.
It's chill. Yeah, it's chill, I guess. But it's like, I don't think they have very substantive conversations.
No, he's very dismissive. Like we see that with the conversation where she was sort of like upset about not knowing her role anymore as a mother if she's not his wife, and that she was sort of like expressing nervousness about things, and he just was like laughing it off, like, come on, sort of like, oh, come on, you. She just feels sad and scared.
Yeah, she's figuring this out. So yeah, I think Sutton is maybe rightly concerned about Kyle.
And
But-
also projecting a little bit. Totally.
Yeah.
And there
Both
seems
are
to be a lot
true.
of that. Like everyone's telling them about their own divorces. You know what I mean? Like Jennifer, Tilly, Erika, and Sutton are all like, well, listen, this is what we went through. So just so you know, it could get really angry. It could be really mean. And it's possible it won't be mean, you know?
Mm-hmm. They are a different dynamic. And I could see Mauricio maybe pulling some shit because she doesn't know anything about the finances.
Yeah.
So,
He could definitely pull some shit. And I think he might not do it in a way where he's nasty to her face. And that might be the difference between her and Erika, or some of the, like Erika told us that Tom, her ex-husband, said some of the meanest things she's ever heard. She wouldn't even repeat it, kind of thing. I could see Mauricio not doing that. But he, would do mean behaviors on the other hand.
Yes, certainly. But so then PK and Dorit eat a meal together. Oh, this was sad. This kind of broke my heart. Dorit comments on single PK's clothes.
He does.
So
he says he calls himself single PK. He's like, she's like, wow, you're dressed like I haven't seen these clothes in a long time. He's like, well, I'm single PK now. And she was like, ah.
Yeah. She's, I think, still very much in denial and moving through the phases of grief with this.
And this was like the next day after they announced their separation. It was kind of rough.
It's bizarre to watch Dorit going through this because she's handling it pretty well, but I don't mean
being in denial.
Yeah, it's not well. It's just strange.
Well, it is well because she's defended, right? Like it's because she needed to be defended. She needed denial to be able to not fall all the way apart on screen. And then she does a little bit with Kyle later on these episodes, but exactly. So she is handling it well, but it's kind of sad, therefore, because it's just phase one.
Yeah. They talked about how their fights escalated over the years. It sounds like they got into some pretty nasty fights, reading between the lines. I don't think either of them, they both have pretty healthy egos, so I don't think either of them would cop to the fights being rough unless they were pretty darn rough.
Yeah.
He ends with PK saying, "You came to me a different woman," and talking about how she used to be vibrant. And now you're always making me feel lesser than. Lots of sexism going on. I think we talked about this last episode, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah. We did. It is one of the things we also talked about because I was upset with the ageism and the sexism. And I was thinking this time, though, I brought it back up in the form of if it was a presenting concern with my client, because I just deeply want somebody to work with Dorit around the internalized oppression, because she just was accepting that language about her and really wasn't challenging it even in the testimonial, like into face to face with us. I just want her to know, like, it's not okay he's saying those things. You know what I mean? He's making her really believe it's all her fault. And I just hate that as well. The amount of blame, because he says, like, I was thinking about, like, how much of this is really me. And then he goes, well, Dorit, da-da-da-da. So basically he's trying to take no blame about how they ended up here. And it's really gross because her self-blame around this is going to be really destructive. And so is all of the internalized isms. It's going to really do a number on her. And I really just absolutely hate it. So I would love for someone to, in therapy, work with her around figuring out what those sociopolitical oppressions are that are affecting his view of her and therefore her self-view.
Excellent. I love that. I think that would be very helpful for her in therapy. Also, I really fucking hope she goes to therapy. I think she needs it really bad around this separation.
Right. Because we all would, you know, like, this is a loss. Her life just changed immensely, you know, so I think that's something anybody would really benefit from therapy around.
Absolutely. So now we're on to episode 3. So Kyle and Portia get some food. She wants to know about Mo's trip and if he's going with people. His daughter said, Portia said, no. I think he, Portia,
she is her daughter. No, you did nothing wrong. I totally was going to say, sorry, that was on my part, because I was like, Portia, but I didn't need to jump in because you have it there. It does say daughter. They're the same person. That was my bad.
No worries at all. But Portia said, I think he wants to go alone. It's so weird to see her as, like, almost an adult, because I remember when Portia was like 5. It's like, this is hard to grow up around this sort of separation and all these headlines and
cameras. Totally.
Yeah. So Portia seems to be trying to be kind of Switzerland, non-committal about the whole thing, where maybe Kyle's showing, like, a little vulnerability. And Feels
Yeah,
kind of
Kyle
complicated.
ends up saying, I'll ask him. I don't care. But it's kind of like, you kind of have to give him his space, I think. And even Portia ended up saying, I just made that up about how he wants to go alone. It's clear she's like trying to be it's like role reversal, right? She's like caretaking her mom. But also, I think that was the trip where he got photographed with a woman. So that's rough.
Yep. And he replaced her picture with his Dancing with the Stars co-star. Like, come on, bro. Yeah. The object relations of some of these dudes, like you're my wife or I devalue you so quickly. It's just brutal. It's brutal to watch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Like when she was my shadow, she was the best, but now she's the worst because she's not my shadow. Like,
yeah. God for fucking bid. But anyway, Kathy then hilariously goes around to people's apartments and houses with suitcases. I mean, I think producers have always kind of shown that Kathy's kind of wacky.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that word. She's like very eccentric. That's a better word. I like that better. Mm-hmm. She's very eccentric. I like that producers are playing that up. Mm-hmm. I wish they would play with like the downsides of it a little more, because I think her obliviousness is very funny, but can also be kind of harmful. Though I think her heart is also in the right place. So it's like very white, privileged lady who has the privilege and access to be very eccentric and out there. And it's mostly endearing, but she mostly keeps things surface level. She doesn't really try to go that deep. And she does also treat people with respect, I think, for the most part, except for maybe Kyle.
I think she went kind of deep with Dorit there when they were one-on-one. Maybe it's like a one-on-one thing. She can go a little bit deeper. Yeah. But yeah, in the group level, she's pretty surface. I also think, to your point about the white privilege thing, that's such a great point. Because remember how like on their trip, she was like telling the cook how to cook and stuff? Like that's really inappropriate. But also like I'm imagining that she's like telling people who are working for her, which regardless of race, it doesn't even matter because it's somebody with at least a class difference, that she's like telling them how to do their job. It's just pretty, like you're saying, nearsighted or sort of out of touch.
Yeah. We later see her brushing her teeth with her eye brush or whatever. I was like, what? It's just wacky. It's, and again, very endearing behavior that only people of a certain race and a certain class would be able to get away with without being put in like some sort of situation where they're like pathologized or whatever.
Yes, totally.
So that happened. Each suitcase was an invite with monogrammed towels, Red Bulls, and funny hats.
Which she invited also a sociopolitical moment, by the way, just really quickly, because she gave a self-tanner to Bose. And I think that's a moment of the obliviousness where it like really shows. Giving self-tanner to everybody as if they're equally using it is inappropriate in that case, right? It's like you don't want to treat her differently because she's Black, but in this case, you're ignoring the fact she's Black by giving her the same self-tanner as everybody else.
Right. It's just a bit careless and not great.
It's colorblind.
Yes, it is indeed very colorblind. And we see Kathy goes to Beau's house, Garcelle's modeling shoot, and Dorit's houses. And it's funny to watch her do her thing. And the hats are kind of goofy and fun. And it's funny to hear the ladies comment on them. But so yeah, overall fun scene. Her like assistant does the sign of the cross when driving with her. That was hilarious. But so fun scene overall.
It was. That was a fun kind of like they made it kind of an upbeat, kind of whimsical, like even kind of scene. Then we cut to like a very depressing scene because it's Kyle and Mauricio talking. This is the one we referenced a little bit earlier about how she's talking actually kind of vulnerably, and he kind of is dismissive about it by being funny or whatever. She tells us he looks happy. He got a 6-month lease so that it wouldn't be severe and we'd be able to reconvene in the future. So it was temporary. And at first it's clear she's still hopeful, but then just minutes later, she learns that actually he bought permanent furniture, which suggests it's not temporary, which she then shares with us is a bad sign, for example. Did you have a segment here?
Oh, maybe I did.
Oh yeah, right here.
Oh, we already talked about this. So, and I think you brought it up. So on the same page, but I wish people talked more about how much of a grief process relationships ending is. I have sometimes in my clinical work done more grief work over relationships ending. It's like deaths are also awful. and really hard.
Traumatizing. Yeah.
Traumatizing. There are times working with people where they will be processing an end of a relationship for years.
Absolutely.
It's the grief is so complicated because there's this thing where someone rejected someone and said, I don't want to be with you anymore. And knowing that person is still around, but they don't want to be with you. I think there's something about that is really profoundly upsetting to people.
Yeah.
And
and in the age of social media where they can see them out and enjoying their lives, and maybe they got pregnant right after they left this man, or maybe the man got engaged right away, or whatever it might be. Yeah. Or any person of any gender moving on, having to see them move on is painful as well. Yeah, I totally agree.
It's hard. And we see this both with Kyle and Dorit. I think they're both holding out hope, and they are going to go through a lot, I think, in the next however many years dealing with this grief. It's sad.
Yeah. And seeing them move on, because both of them are public figures. So they're going to see them move on. PK and Mauricio. Ugh.
Ugh.
So great point. And more of sort of grief and ending stuff there that comes up in addition in terms of her role confusion being associated with the grief and loss. So in addition to losing Mauricio, she lost her old self. Like, she lost who she was days earlier, frankly, like when she was a wife. And, she was involved with picking out towels, and she was involved with the bedding. And he just kept telling, she was like nitpicking, sorry, if you will. Actually, that's shitty and probably sexist, honestly. She was finding minutia about the towels to dwell on with Mauricio, because it was a way of feeling her old role again, like inhabiting her role that she's used to. And so that was, I think, painful to watch, because I think it really did come out of role confusion. And that was what he was dismissive about. And I think that's where he could have been like, listen, I love that. I'm so glad that you're still feeling connected with this. And I do think I got the towels I need, but I will let you know if I have questions about it. And I just so appreciate what you've taught me over the years. Done.
You
know what I mean?
Kind.
She would stop talking about it, and she would also feel heard and felt. So I don't know. It was tough. She also said oh my gosh, yeah. So the last thing about this part is that the producers asked Kyle if she hopes that one day she'll be back with Mauricio. She thinks about it, and then she says, I don't want to answer that right now. So again, we're back at that place of the sort of like hope and the denial phase of grief associated with her loss of her relationship.
Oh, it's kind of heartbreaking.
So painful.
Poor Kyle. So then, on a very different note, back to the ladies go in a party bus with Kathy Hilton to her beach house. Woo! And Dorit and Kyle are talking, and we're going to pretend like they're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Just for now, temporarily.
Yes, exactly. They play a Never Have I Ever drinking game, and Garcelle discloses that she has slept with Eddie Murphy, Will Smith, and Sean Penn. I had a sociopolitical, I thought people would be talking about this the next day. Erika was kind of shady, I thought, when she was like, oh, I'm surprised she didn't marry Sean Penn. A, the one white guy, which felt racist. And B, it was like almost implying that she wasn't being like honest or something. I don't know. It just it rubbed me the wrong way. I thought it was a little jealous.
Definitely jealous. Totally.
It was weird. I found it weird in multiple ways, but
that's super helpful, because I didn't clock the Sean Penn part of it. I clocked that she said if she slept with all three of them, why did she end up marrying her husband? Why didn't she marry one of them? It was the only part that I totally think that was super jealous. And also, yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying too, sort of like doubting a little bit, but also I think, I just think it's shady at the minimum and rude. I also, before you move on, had a sociopolitical thing about the Never Have I Ever game. So during the Never Have I Ever drinking game, at one point we see Sutton turn to Garcelle and Bose. They're both in the corner of the limo or bus, whatever. And she's pouring champagne, and she goes, "Are you never doubt my abilities?" And it was very much Ave, so African-American vernacular English, the way she said it. And she was saying it directly to Garcelle. And I thought it was only Garcelle, but then if you look in the corner, even if she wasn't looking at Garcelle, the only other person she could have been looking at was Bose. So either way, it was to a person of color, even if it wasn't wildly inappropriate, but just even more like problematic to say that to somebody, to a Black person's face. I just was really like, again, regardless, it's problematic, but it's also something that Dr. Ray and I talk about sometimes, because there is a lot of language that is appropriated by white Americans that is even just the word woke. Like, I actually try not to use the word woke, and we don't really use that word, which I'm impressed with us about that. But even though that's a really common word because it comes out of Black culture. And so we're trying not to appropriate, but it's easy to fall into that, right? There's a lot of like funny things that are, and then in some ways, right? Like, are we celebrating that culture in some ways? But no, if we're not recognizing where it's coming from and talking about that and giving credit where it's due. So in that case, it's appropriation. Also, just in addition, by being white people, we can't use that language in a way that's authentic to its original use just by being white. So even if we're recognizing where it comes from, it's still inappropriate in many ways. So I think it's good to, if it happens, just note it and maybe name it and be like, oh, my bad, like my mistake, my bad, honestly. That's interesting. I wonder about that. But yeah, so it's one of those things where naming, I think, would have helped her right there. And I don't think she noticed it. But yeah, it just reminded me of how often Garcelle, and maybe Garcelle didn't notice it either. She is very much in a white culture, but I do think a lot about how she is so forced to not take up issues about race. And I hate it so much. So
I feel for her. And it's helpful to see those moments because I can notice them in other people. But like I've had moments where I've probably done that with like trying to relate to a person of color and like slipped into African-American vernacular in ways that are problematic. And I don't like that quality and it's not good. And so I think when we notice those things in other people as white people, we also have to be willing to look at them in ourselves because we are all racist and we all fuck it up sometimes.
Yep. It's going to be a lifelong journey. And that's okay. You know, it's like if the more we can accept that we're racist and because we're conditioned to be, and then be knowing it's going to be a lifelong journey, the less sort of nervous we get about noticing when we do that. And I think the other thing I think about us as white people is holding each other accountable too. Definitely looking at our own selves and knowing that we do it too. If you're going to notice that other people do it, you should know also you do it. But I think also for each other, for example, Dr. Ray and I often check in with each other like, hey, did this, how did this land? Or what was this like for you? And what do you think about this? Because we should not be putting the work on people of color to tell us things like that. We should be telling each other as a way of holding ourselves accountable and each other.
Indeed. And making the changes within ourselves. And like, that's, I think that what matters is the
putting it into
change.
action. Exactly.
Yes, indeed. So, and I actually believe that Sutton, I do think she wants to be better. I actually do. I think she has growth to do, but I think she really values her friendship with Garcelle. And I think their friendship is genuine. And so I think she would want to do better and not offend Garcelle.
Totally.
So,
yeah. And I'm not sure it did offend Garcelle, and that's fine too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe she's just gotten used to it. Ugh.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
But so then the ladies go down to the beach under a canopy. They're talking about divorce, but Dorit and Bose are kind of talking off by themselves. I think Dorit is probably very much enjoying this because she loves her friendship with Bose and that they're really connecting. And then the other ladies are like, this is weird. Why aren't we in on this conversation? Erika, you know, I think is trying to defend Dorit. She's really taking up for Dorit a lot, but also finding some of her behavior cringeworthy. Erika then disclosed, as Dr. Kay mentioned earlier, that some of the things that Tom said are so mean that she won't repeat them. And Jennifer Tilly, I thought this was interesting, shared that she married Sam Simon, who created The Simpsons. They were together for 10 years, married for 7, and she got a part of The Simpsons in the divorce, which is incredible because it's still going, and she thanks him every day.
That's cute.
So
yeah, that was awesome. I had no idea. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool too. I'm like, wow, that's like a big thing to get. And my goodness, she's still probably making money off of that. So we've got some ladies here who have made some solid money in divorces. So perhaps Kyle and Dorit would behoove them to listen to some of these ladies who probably know how to fairly get compensated for marriages.
But those women were divorcing when they were not on the show. And I wonder if some of it is also like how many finances they had at the time, how much financial support or like stability they had themselves at the time. Whereas Kyle, I think, does make money and so does Dorit. But I imagine less, right? Just by the fact they're women, A.
Yeah.
B, because Mauricio works in real estate in a very, very expensive market. I'm sure he does make more than she does by a lot. And then PK, I don't know. I'm assuming he does because he's in the music world. But I'm sure they still would make more, but it might be different just given that their financial stability. They also have their own.
Yes, that's a really good point. And then they play some Kathy Hilton inspired games on the beach. I'm noticing that there's more like, this trip is my trip, and this trip should say something about my personality and my brand. Like Lisa Barlow is like, this is a Lisa Barlow trip. So I'm realizing that that's like a way of enhancing like brand sort of identity or something. And you could really see that in Kathy's trip too.
Yeah.
And
it's like
I
a way
think
of standing out.
Yeah, I think it was successful. I actually think that those games ended up being really goofy and fun. Dorit face planted twice, which was
kind of enjoyable. She was like really good support. She was really good support.
Oh,
really good sport about it.
She was. But so yeah, fun day at the beach, I think.
Yeah. And people acknowledge that too, even though they were like sort of suspicious at first or whatever the word is, you know, they didn't love the idea of playing Duck Duck Goose. They ended up enjoying it. So good for Kathy. And then the dinner starts. Well, first they're getting ready for dinner. We see, for example, that Garcelle, Jennifer Tilly, and Sutton were talking about how Dorit and Bose kind of like paired off during the dinner. And it was a little bit like blinders up for Dorit in particular, who should know that like the rest of the group would want to get to know Bose. It's not on Bose. Like it's very much on Dorit because that's like where she was directing the conversation to just be with Bose. And no one was like really let into it. And at first I was like, guys, let them talk, like whatever, who cares? But then when they said we want to get to know Bose too, I was like, oh right, that is what it is, and that is shitty. So I get that. And Dorit and Erika are getting ready and talk about the elephant in the room, which is talking about Kyle. The Dorit's earrings thing was confusing to me. And then they go to the dinner itself, and there's a cheers done by Kyle to Kathy, talking about how nothing goes unnoticed, that she laughed so hard and thank you. And then she turns to Dorit and says, I don't know when you and I are going to speak, but I don't want there to be awkwardness. And Dorit said, I think it's important we address the elephant in the room. Everyone knows we had a heated conversation and then you stormed off, for example. So right there, blaming right away. And then like also like what, like in that moment I was like, whoa, like hello. Like it was very much
coming
like
in hot
on you, you know. And then even though it got heated because of something Dorit said or whatever. And then Dorit brings up twice about Erika. Like she's like throws Erika right under the bus about a lot of things.
Poor Erika.
Right up top. And then Kyle says, God gave you 2 ears and a mouth for a reason. Can you let me talk? And Dorit says, it's okay, Kyle. It's time for you to fucking listen. And that was the end of the episode. Heated end of that fight. Yes, it was.
So then we, like we did before in a previous episode, get more of the Oceanside dinner Dorit-Kyle fight. Kyle said, I was a very good friend for many years. That's a thing that Lisa Barlow says, too. It's kind of interesting, like that I'm a very good friend.
I've earned this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Dorit said, I'm talking specifically about the last 2 years. And Kyle cited very real things that have happened in her life. She lost her friend and is going through a separation. Give me a fucking break. And I feel like she hasn't gotten a lot of like validation and support around her separation compared to what Dorit's now getting. It's kind of weird. And Dorit said, I wanted to give you grace, but I've been taking it, and then you push too far. Dorit then throws Erika under the bus again about how Erika said something shady, but there's a different standard for Dorit or something. But then Kyle was like, well, she apologized, and so there was difference. Sutton talked about how Kyle does punishments, like not speaking to people for months at a time, because I think Dorit brought that up. And Kyle actually said that's something she wants to work on, which I thought was like really cool. And I would want to work with her on this in therapy. I had a segment here about that. And to look at her strategies of connection and disconnection. Like it seems like for her, this came from somewhere, and I wonder where she learned that, like, when there's conflict, you have to just disconnect and kind of punish someone, because that came from somewhere. I don't know
definitely
where.
Like a parent, one of her parents, I'm sure, was like withholding when upset.
Yep. And so that's the strategy she has learned, but she seemed really open to working on it. And that's when I was really like endeared to her in this whole situation, because she does seem to be trying to take accountability and recognizing where she could do a little better.
Yeah. Totally.
And then Kyle's like, I didn't handle it right, but I'm apologizing. And then Dorit said, I'm sorry that I read the text message with Erika and said anything. I'm sorry that the joke at BravoCon hurt you, which I was like, that's not a good apology.
Mm-mm.
And I'm like, I don't think she was actually trying to dig her, but
No, I agree.
So it's like it's a disingenuous apology, right? And like you're like, that's a bad apology. And I can understand if you genuinely don't think like you just shouldn't apologize then.
Yes.
I think is where I come down on that.
Yeah. And Kyle told her, she's like, I don't accept that. You can't even really apologize to me.
Yeah. So that was complicated. And then Garcelle says she agrees with Kyle that Dorit doesn't apologize. Dorit says, I wouldn't expect you to not agree. And yeah.
I wouldn't expect you to not agree with Kyle. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Garcelle says, so we're on the same page. Beautiful. And I think that is very socio-political and is like an ongoing thing where Dorit can't take any responsibility for her dynamic with Garcelle. And that's something that you talked about previously. And I think Garcelle is still upset about it. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Totally. I think Dorit, her only leg that she can stand on, Garcelle shouldn't have probably accused Dorit's trauma. I think she was coming from a place of hurt, but
I totally. And I totally accept that. I think that was wildly fucked up. And I also think, like you said, she's coming from a place of hurt and that Dorit is blind to what Garcelle has tried to share with her about race and that comes really like down hard, especially during, this was during the Black Lives Matter era. It was sort of like a really important time for her to understand it. And Erika understood it. And, I think it was tough for Garcelle to feel again like she's silenced about race.
Right. Because she really chooses her battles. So when she's choosing a battle, I think people should listen to her because there's a lot of shit she lets go.
Exactly. To not look like the angry Black woman. So totally agree.
Poor thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. And then we see Sutton and Garcelle talk about the fight. And Garcelle's like, this feels like there's a lot of betrayal and hurt on both sides between Dorit and Kyle. Erika and Dorit are talking. This is one of my segments as well. So Dorit says last night was the first step because this is the first chance to get things off my chest. And I was wondering, like, what is it that she's got off her chest? Like, all she really brought up was how Kyle iced her out. Like, I don't know. I feel like she's not really saying a whole lot that Kyle doesn't already know. But I guess just being able to yell a little bit maybe is helping her, which is fair. If she needs to express herself and not feel silenced about it, I get it. I did think that Erika's point was really good. And she said that she's really worried about Dorit's mental health. She said, I know she's scared. She's just not saying it. And I gave this one my therapy one, like we see therapy here, because twice over, I felt like Erika really showed her therapy, like the fact she's in therapy. I think we might have even done this before too, but it's still true. One was here where I felt like she really had empathy for Dorit. And I actually didn't think it was as much projection as I really felt like she understood it and was really trying to show Dorit, like, it's okay. I feel what you're feeling, not identically, but I understand if you're feeling this way. And Dorit seemed to really catch it. Like, she really didn't seem defensive about it, which I thought was really important. It showed that Erika was really able to share empathy in a receivable way. The other time was when they got ready to go on the boat a little bit later, which I'll just do now to be done with it, which is that she saw that Jennifer Tilly had these Louis Vuitton bags, including one that was like a boat. And she was like, that's not a purse, that's art. And she goes, I am definitely coveting thy neighbor's goods. And she like got a little bit frustrated. And I loved it. I love that she like let herself be a little jealous. She named it. She like showed her kind of frustration of being jealous. And then she got over it. It was great. I was like, that's a really good like self-compassionate response to feeling envy. It doesn't mean we have to get rid of envy. It means we notice it and not let it drive the car. Yeah. So I thought that was also a good growth moment. AFOG, baby.
Yes, we love the Erika's doing. She's so grounded. It's just great to see. I track this as a, like, she mentioned therapy because I think she was really saying to Dorit, you need to go to therapy about this.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, it's fun. We both did the same moment. That's so cool because it wasn't even an actual therapy thing. That's so good. Like, she mentioned it that way, but it wasn't that we spotted it. So I love that.
Loved it. But yes, where are we now? Oh,
I'm still talking. My bad.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
My mistake. Unless you have something else to add. Yeah, you said mention therapy. Perfect. So Dorit was like, I have enough to be strong for. I'm putting my foot down with Kyle and PK. I understand that. I understand putting your foot down. I think it's also about, like, what is your goal here? Like, it almost seemed like her goal was similar to what she's accusing Kyle of, where she wanted to, like, just be angry with them, which is okay. But I think then what is it that you need them to hear? How are you going to get your needs met? And then put that out there is what I would suggest. So I think she does end up going in on, like, repairing it. So that's fine. But Kyle, Kathy, and Jennifer Tilly are talking. I felt like Kathy was like, get out there and be bold or whatever. Kyle was like, we're just going to let it digest and see what happens. And Kathy did this really cute little dance while she was getting ready to go. I really enjoyed it.
She's so funny. And then, there was Yacht Captain Theo to be Sutton. Kyle told Garcelle that PK reaches out to her. Garcelle clocked this as something that was very weird. It is weird. Mm-hmm. I think if we heard, because there were rumors about Dorit and Mauricio, if we heard that Dorit and Mauricio were texting, then I think there would be a lot of concern. I think because maybe of PK's age, it's not being clocked the same way, but we don't know what it's about.
Great point.
Kyle and Dorit close the gap. They seem to be in like a better place. And they actually talk about, ironically, their husbands are leaning on each other. And they acknowledge they need to have more conversations, but they don't need to be toxic, and kind of can work on banking in the good kind of interactions in their relationship. Garcelle is having a hard time figuring out what's next for her as a woman. She's accomplished a lot. Does she want a partner, not a partner? What will her life look like without work and kids? And Kyle and Garcelle are talking. They seem to be more buddy-buddy this season than I've seen them previously, which is nice to see. Sure. Actually, I wonder, Kyle's maybe questioning her sexuality. I know Garcelle has alluded to that in the past. Maybe there's a little billiance happening.
Yes.
I love it. If that is what's happening, then I'm so here for it.
It makes sense because Kyle told her about that. They talked about, obviously Garcelle even also asked her questions and sort of saying, well, the music video was she sort of was in it in that conversation with her. So I totally agree. That could definitely be a part of what brought them together. It's so nice.
Oh, I love that. And they both acknowledge that it's scary not knowing what the end looks like. And then Dorit and Sutton. So going through, I think, having this shared experience of this really fucking hard thing that all of these women have gone through it's kind of beautiful and feels real to watch those conversations. Their real pain is coming through.
So that actually I had a hard time coming up with a segment for if producers were psychologists, but this is the exact moment I picked up on because of how real those conversations were, that I actually felt like it was a little bit of a disservice that they were on a yacht. It felt a little bit misplaced just because it's really heavy. All three conversations were so deep. What Garcelle was sharing, I just oh my God, that was so powerful and something so many women experience. And I just, in some ways, the fact we rushed on from her conversation to then talking about Kyle and Dorit also felt like a disservice to Garcelle. We just scooted right along to those two white women. So that felt like a little bit of a disservice, kind of grouping these all together at once. But then also, the fact they're on a yacht, in a sunny, upbeat place, just felt like it, because it wasn't long. You know what I mean? They said 2 comments, then we moved on, 2 comments, then we moved on. Mm-hmm. It's these are really big things. And I think I feel like the gravitas that they should have had. But at the same time, I'm just glad they had those conversations. So, but yeah, I think the gravitas could have been a little bit more, and the length of these conversations could have been a little bit more valued.
I love that. Yeah, so, I really like that as a producer psychologist moment. Bose talks to Kathy about dating. I thought this was really interesting, hearing about her dating experiences.
Mm-hmm. She enough. Again,
no.
Yeah.
She asks if people are threatened by her success, her height, her kid. I think they also said her the color of her skin, or maybe I made that up, but I can't remember.
That, but that's so good if that's true. I hope so.
But it's which if she did say that, I wish they would have talked about that more, because that's really interesting.
That's part of this issue. Exactly. It was all just sort of quickly rattled off, and the whole conversation was so quick, and suddenly we were talking about Jennifer Tilly's fraud guy, con artist.
Yeah. Which it's every story is valid. And I think some of these stories have been less heard traditionally. Mm-hmm. So we want to center them more. So there's some 2 con artists, I think. No, wait, Jennifer Tilly had the con artist. She was completely lied to by the man before Keely.
Oh, no, that's Bose's. So Bose
Oh,
also
I'm
had a con
sorry.
artist. Yeah. No, you got this. You had it. You have it right. It was just that I didn't even
And then I
put Jennifer
forgot.
Tilly's down because I was like being all bitter about it. But Bose had a con. She called him a con artist and said that he turned out he was sleeping with his ex and he lied to her face.
Ugh.
And then Jennifer Tilly jumped in and was like, "Me too. Let me tell you about my con artist who acted like he had money and actually she said he was actually doing kind of well for himself. He like worked in whatever the fuck." And then she said, "But then I would like give him my credit card under the table so that he could look like he was paying for it." And that was another really important moment. I was sort of thinking about like pride and masculinity and this idea that men have to pay for, the traditional gender roles and all that. And again, kind of went too quick. We were done and it was over.
Mm-hmm. When those are really lovely moments of connection over hard things.
Important feminist themes too. And it's just a bummer.
Mm-hmm. Kathy and Dorit are playing matchmaker for Sutton and Theo. Dorit gives Sutton's number to Theo. He carries her down. It was kind of cute and silly. Mm-hmm. I feel bad for Sutton sometimes because I think her sexuality is made to be a joke. Mm-hmm. Like she's kind of awkward and kind of neurotic, but like mm-hmm. I think it's like punching down for the women to be, particularly the women that were married, to be like, "Oh, you're so awkward. What are you doing?" It's like, it's hard out there. And her cat sweaters are great. And like, she's figuring it out. And I don't know.
She's being her whole self.
Yeah. I'm glad she got like a nice moment with Theo where no one made fun of her kind of thing.
Yeah. That's so cute. I love that. Great point. And also worth mentioning, this boat was a totally different boat trip than last year or 2 years ago. I guess it's 2022 when Erika was trying to figure out the balance between her meds and her drinkings. And it was like roll sloppy messy. And so this was not messy at all. What a great boat trip with really important conversations that I'd love to see picked up again for longer. Mm-hmm. And then they go to the second dinner number 2. Here, Kathy talks about how she has nude pictures in a bank vault, which was one of my favorite things ever. And she talked about, she was like, "You should go to the such and such casino," or I think maybe because it was like a fancy hotel. I think it was in Vegas. She said where they have rooms with big mirrors and that's where she took her pictures. And I love that everyone was like, "Cheers to that." I was like, I love it. It's so cute. Not to infantilize. I think it's so meaningful, honestly. The women were celebrating her sexuality. I think that's so fun. And then Garcelle outed Dorit for saying she's not friends with Teddy, despite reposting Teddy's video from her dad, John Mellencamp's concert, that Dorit was in the picture. I think that was a little bit like, I don't need it. The drama there was like, meh. Sutton makes a speech and asks everybody to stand and put their hands in the middle. And she ties their hands together with a ribbon. And there was sort of like some, like side comments about this and sort of like, this is silly. Are we at camp or whatever? I think the intention was good. I also think, so what happens next is they're on the bus home and she brings up Erika talking behind Dorit's back, like making side conversation with Kyle about Dorit, and said like, "I wish you just said it louder so that we can be open and honest with each other." And Dorit said, like, takes up the other issue from it, which is like what Erika was talking about rather than the fact Erika was talking about her at all. And so then it kind of gets diverted and she ends up yelling with Sutton. So she and Sutton end up fighting, even though Sutton actually kind of had her back there.
Yeah, she did.
And she ends up saying Sutton's two-faced and she always does this and that. And so I think what I was going to say about that, the reason I rushed onto that part is the conversation that Sutton has about tying the ribbon and saying, "Let's be sisters, let's do this together and stay close." I don't think it is completely depleted by what happens on the bus. I think the idea is like, she's going to get fiery. We're all going to get upset. And if people come for you, you're going to get defensive. I think that's like a human nature thing. And I don't think that was her point. I think her point was like, if we weren't coming for each other, I wouldn't get upset. Like that's still, you're actually kind of proving what she's saying, right? Like even her bringing up Erika's comment, Erika didn't get mad. Erika didn't, she's a little bit defensive to the side, but she wasn't to her face. She kind of was like, "Yeah, I did do that," And so I think that showed the sort of open communication I think Sutton was trying to model. But then when Dorit sort of diverted and then got, sort of rough with Sutton, then Sutton was like, "Okay, well, Jesus, here we go," taking up arms as well. So there was some stuff there to be had, some dynamics. This is the end of the recap, so I just wanted to share that my last one that I didn't cover was something we thought people would mention the following day, but they didn't. Mine is more something I disagreed with that people were saying the next day. So a lot of people, including on Watch What Happens Live, with, I think Garcelle said it, and I think so did, she was there with, who was she there with? But they also, I think, agreed with her, but was it? Fuck, I don't know. Anyway, point being, it was Kyle. Sorry, Kyle. The both of them were agreeing that this was the case, was that everybody kept saying like, "Wow, I can't believe Dorit and PK talked about the relationship like that. Like, I can't believe they were fighting all the time like that. I can't believe they were so nasty with each other." I don't know why, but I feel like I've known this for a long time. Like the way he treated her about the PTSD was so traumatic to watch. Like, and then how he treated her the day that he abducted her for her birthday, which was totally tone deaf and traumatizing. And then he bashed her for how she reacted. So, well, I guess I'll just stop giving surprises then. It's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, how do you not get how traumatizing that would be for her? And he doesn't listen to her. He doesn't listen to what she's trying to explain about why it was traumatizing and literally triggering for her. She was kept under gun, like at the point of a gun during the abduction. And then he abducts her for like, what the fuck? So like, in my opinion, the way he treated her in both of those situations, even when she very calmly tried to explain why that was upsetting, I think it really showed me that he has been nasty and had nasty language for a long time. If he's willing to do that on camera and no one gave him shit for it and he didn't own it as a problem, I think that's what this is a symptom of, is people weren't holding him accountable back when those kind of things were happening. And that was problematic back then. And it still is. And the fact that they've gotten meaner with each other was not a surprise to me. I think she's probably standing up for herself in a way she didn't used to. I think also being triggered and having trauma probably makes her a little bit more impulsive, or just not impulsive, but irritable, which is understandable as fuck.
Totally.
It's like one of the symptoms, a very common symptom. So I just felt like, yeah, it was vulnerable of them to share some of that conversation, but really what we learned was how much more of an asshole PK is to her, which is more of the same for me. So in the same way that I was like, I think we knew that, what was the other thing? I was like, the other one that was like, well, we knew that about him, but everyone's surprised by it. I forget what it is. But maybe it was just the shit he would say to her or something. No, there's two different things though. Oh, the being gone for weeks at a time. Just like that, where like I knew he was gone during the PTSD stuff and during the original abduction or the original burglary. I knew he was gone during that. So I didn't know he would leave. And she talked about how she was upset he wasn't there. She's like, I need him and he's not here. And she said that happens a lot. Like, I'll need him and he's not here. But the only thing we didn't know was it was several weeks at a time. But people were surprised by that too, you know? So it's sort of like, there's things where I feel like we've known a little bit of this and we've just let it go. I don't know if it's out of a dislike for Dorit or like a blindness about PK, which I more so think it is. And it makes me upset because I think PK has been getting a pass for far too long. And I'm glad that people are holding him accountable, hopefully more. But yeah, so when people the next day were sort of like, wow, I can't believe that that's been going on. I was just sort of like, really? I don't know. I feel bad for her that people are sort of like, what a surprise, you know? It's sort of like, really? He's just been awful to her.
I agree. People are using her sort of foibles, her more than foibles, her shortcomings as like, oh, well, she's annoying. Therefore, PK's fine, which is a really short-sighted way of looking at the dynamics going on there. She's a whole person with strengths and growth edges, to be sure.
Exactly. If we have whole object thinking, then we can both see her as annoying and making really, really important microaggressions that are very hurtful and saying very hurtful things and not taking accountability for it. And as somebody who doesn't deserve to be treated the way she's being treated by PK, because no one does. So,
absolutely.
Both and. Yeah.
Both and.
What important conversations we were able to have today as a result of these important conversations happening on the show. What a delight for a bougie kind of show to bring this
bougie Beverly Hills ladies. We thank you for having some conversations, even for a few minutes or seconds.
Which is on the producers, because I'm sure it was longer.
Yeah,
exactly. Yes. But check out our social meds, and check back for the news that will be dropping, because it might drop before you hear our podcast or on the same day or a couple days after. You never know. Around there. It's going to be on our social meds though when we do announce it. You're also going to be able to find us on Instagram at Dr. Ray Pods and at Dr. K Pods, on TikTok at drdr.realitv, REALITV. You'll find us on Facebook and YouTube at Reality Test Pod, where YouTube is literally an at Reality Test Pod and Facebook is Reality Space Test Space Pod. It's a page you can follow.
Yes, do all those things and please download us. It helps us to continue doing this thing, our podcast that we love so much.
Yes. And you can delete it after you download it. Still count.
Yeah, whatever. All right.
But thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you so very deeply, truly, madly, deeply. And we will see you next session.
Bye.
Yay.